Hello everyone, my name's Lou Sims, and today I thought we'd have a bit of fun creating some loose effect watercolour backgrounds using the beautiful Ecoline's watercolour inks. I'm also going to be using them, let's just move them out of the way, with the liquid watercolour paper, or should I say watercolour card, and it's a 290 GSM or £140 card, which comes in a great pack. It's slightly bigger than an A4. So all I've done is I've taken the card and one piece and just cut it down into four. The main reason I do that is sometimes it's daunting to work on a larger piece, but you know it's a little bit more liberating to work on smaller pieces of card. So I'm just going to tidy up these few bits and we'll get discussing about what we're going to be doing next. Okay, right. Please forgive my background. This is just an old tea towel cloth that I've got. And the main reason I'm using it is it will soak up when I spritz with water, add the inks and things like that. It will just soak up all the materials and I don't have to keep cleaning up in between shots because things are a little bit too wet. Now, what have we got here? Now, the Ecolines have been around in one way or another since the 1930s. So they have been, out and about with us in lots of different guises for a very long time. Now, they're transparent colours and they work better because of the transparency on a white or a lighter colour card. Now, they're a dye-based watercolour ink, which means we can do all those wonderful watercolour effects that we like. They come in really sturdy bottles, which, sit perfectly on your table. If you unscrew the lid, it then comes with a pipette, so you can drop that out straight onto your projects or into mixing wells if that's what you prefer to use, or use your brush directly. Now, I've got into the habit of screwing my lids back on tightly, only because I've learnt the hard way that when I don't and I put them away, I'm wasting all precious ink. Now, one of the things about them is they're based on dyes and gum arabic. So the colours are bright, vivid and, vibrant and really help in that way. Now, they're not truly light fast, which means if you were going to hang on your wall for the next 300 years, yes, they would fade. However, I'm going to say for me, and I display my works of art around my room, they haven't diminished in any way, shape or form. And I work right by lots of light and windows. And I also add all my work to art journals, so it is protected. But that doesn't stop you creating, some wonderful pieces for illustration, for your art journals, card making. So don't think just because they haven't got the light fastness of another watercolour that they won't stand up to the test of time. They truly will. Now for this video, I'm just going to put these colours back in my pot over here. Sorry for the noise. I thought we'd create some nice simple backgrounds using stencils and simple other techniques. And this is a Crafter's Workshop stencil, and I've gone for this one because of the open spaces on it, so I can add to it, take things away from it. And what I want to do is, using a similar color palette, is create different backgrounds that we can then use in our art journaling, card making, you name it. So let's make a start. Right, for my first piece, what I want to do is I just want to take the card and I'm just going to spritz with some water. Obviously, the more water you put in, the more the wonderful colours, will travel. And I'm going to put the stencil on top. Now, I know this will mean then when I add my Ecoline inks to it, watercolour inks to it, it will bleed underneath. But actually, for this point, I'm not actually worried about that. I want to create a background and I'm just using the stencil as a marker. It sounds a little bit hard to explain, but as we go along, hopefully that will make sense. Now, as with watercolour card, it is starting to slightly bow because of the water I've got on there, but it will dry back flat. I've also got, where I've been using this stencil before, I've got some other colours bleeding through. Now, if that bothers you, clean your stencil before you start. I quite like to see what happens next. So I'm just going to add some, and this is where the pipette comes in handy, because I can add my colour to it. And a little goes a long way for what I want to do for this background. So I've got that there. I just want to add a little bit of contrast to it. And I'm just going to bring in the yellow, which is from here. Now the Ecolines come in like mixed sets, or you can buy them individually. So you can then create the colour palette you want to create right from the start. And then finally, I only want a couple of drops of this beautiful blue. So you can see where I've got the water, it's starting to travel underneath the stencil. But as I said, that I'm not worried about as such. And then just taking, oops, sorry, move that. Another piece of the card. I'm just going to put this on the top. As with all liquids, they just want to find their way out. So I'm just going to put that on the top. But this time what I'm going to do is I want to make the stencil stand out. So I'm just going to use a brayer so I can put just a little bit more pressure. You could do this now through a die cutting machine and create more of an embossed look. I'm using the brayer because it's quicker for me. I don't have to get another piece of equipment out, really, if I'm being honest. Right, so I'll just move my brayer out the way. Because now I've got that background. And as you can see, I've got that background. I'm trying to hold the ink up. So what I've done is I've got this background here. And because I've used the brayer, I can see clearly now where some of the stencil parts are, which is what I wanted. And I've also got this background starting here. And I don't want to waste the ink that's on here. So I'm going to grab another piece of card. Let's just move these out of the way. And let's just place the stencil down. And I'm just going to use my brayer again. And all I'm doing is I just want to use up the ink that's on the stencil rather than, you know, waste it. Because each time we do it in a different way, it creates a totally different look. I'm just going to clean just in case there's anything on the brayer. So from that, I've got that look there. Now I've got some other bits on here. So I've got the tiniest amount left. I'm just going to do a little bit of spritz of water with it. And I'm not going to waste it. I'm just going to add it back onto this piece of card. And I'm just going to use the brayer. The brayer will pick up for me a little bit. Don't want to lose the stencil detailing, and it will pick up that for me. So I've got that like that. Right. So we've got these three pieces just by, you know, that simple watercolour technique. I'm going to put the stencil out of the way. Now, we could take these further. I could spritz them and it would blend out even further. This one I like, so I'm going to keep this one. Now, this one here, I could spritz out a little bit more. And as you can see, I can start reactivating the ink again. Now, the ink, it wasn't 100% dry, and that's why it moves. But one of the things for the Ecolines is they are water reactive afterwards. Sorry, I'm just doing little splats, so trying to talk to you and do it that way. Now, I'm going to bring in some explosion powders while this is a little bit wet, and these are from Pretty Gets Gritty. And they've got lots of different colours in them, and I've chosen the different colours because they will work with the colour palette I've got at the moment. And whilst the Ecolines are a little bit wet, I'm just going to put some of the explosion powders on top, because now I can, you know, bring that in, and then I'm just going to use and manipulate where I've got some of these lovely dribbles, and just add a little bit more water. And I'm just going to bring in now, back in. I'm just going to drop on some of the colours that I was using originally from there. And as you can see, they now are merging with the explosion powder. So I'm now going to create a really sparkly Ecoline. I'm just trying to see if I can lift it up so you can see, if you can see the sparkle in amongst from the explosion powders amongst the liquid Ecoline. So I've got that going there. So what I want to do is I just want to quickly add the stencil back. Now, I could sit here and faff and work out where it went. So she now doing that. And I'm going to bring in this piece of card. I'm just going to put it over the top. And again, using my brayer. So the brayer won't give you as much pressure as if you ran this through a die cutting machine. Because obviously the die cutting machine would give you more of an impression of the stencil. But it's enough for what I would like to do, she says. Right, so we just put that across there. And I've got a more watercoloured look. So now, let's put the stencil out the way. Going back over it, I've now mixed in the explosion powders. Or to put you under the right bit of the camera would help, wouldn't it? I've now mixed in a little bit more of the explosion powders, which are showing up here, in with the beautiful Ecoline inks. And I've created my own little bespoke pearlized background. So just by adding the Ecolines and a bit more water, we've gone from the different intensities in colour. And I can still see the stencil background that I want to use. So those two I'm happy with. So this one, these two are what we would consider like our mop-up sheets. And I still want to work on those a little bit. I've got lots of beautiful, I can see it, pearlized Ecoline ink there. So let's just rub some of that off. We've got a little bit more there. Okay, so I've got these backgrounds here. I'm just going to tidy these bits up and come back. Okay, so these bits here have lots of colour and interest and starting points for different backgrounds. You could leave them like this and, you know, bring in your die cuts and die cut out elements, cut them down into smaller panels, or we can continue to work on them. And I thought it would be rather nice just to continue to work on them. So I'm going to still stick to the same stencil and build it up. So I'm not, this time I know where I can see the petal designs, so I'm just going to rotate it a little bit. And I'm just going to spritz some water through. Now any ink that's watercolour ink that's left on here may bleed into the design, but you know what, I think that's going to be part of the process. And I'm just going to bring in some of the beautiful magenta. I'm just going to let it drop in certain places. And where there's more water, as you can see, it's blending out. Where there's less water, it's just sitting and pooling, which is cool as well. And there, the card is obviously, I've put no water at all because it's dry and it's just sitting on there on top. But that's fine because that will create another look. Put a little bit in there. And that's just run underneath the stencil because the stencil's not stuck down. It's not being, I think the hardest thing when we create backgrounds like this is not having an expectation of what's going to happen, but just having a play. So I've got the blue there, I've got a little bit of the pink there. I'm not sure if I'm going to add the yellow yet. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this piece and we're going to put it on top. And I'm just trying to think, am I going to, no, we won't rotate it, we'll do it this way. Now, before I do that, what will happen is this piece here that's sitting on the dry watercolour card will splat out a little bit further, but that is each one of them is going to create something a little bit different. And again, I'm going to bring my brayer in. She says looking for it. Oh, it's just this side of me. And again, the reason I'm using the brayer is it's pushing out the ink, you know, so I'm getting as maximum amount that way. But two, I'm making that impression with the stencil. So I will see some of the outline of the stencil within my own work, which is what I'm after too. Right, just going to clean that down. So we've now got this on top, and I can see, so you can see where the colours and the new colours I've added. I can see where the blue is now merged into the other green that was originally there, and where the yellow was there, I've got some extra interesting colours going on top. So you can layer your colours on, like watercolours, though they will react with each other, but you get a totally different look. Right, so let's just drag that one away. And this was my base layer. So I can still see all the green that I had there, but where I've added and dropped the other colours on top, I've got a totally different look. They're similar, but not identically the same. So this is a bit more of a controlled way of using your liquid watercolours if you're not quite ready to embrace just going for it. So let's just put them there out of the way. Now this I can't waste. I'm just going to grab a spare piece of mop-up card. As you can see, this is a spare piece here. And let's just give this a spritz. I'm just going to give this a quick spritz, which will dilute it even further. I will do this. I will keep spare bits of card around. I'm just going to see if I've got a second piece. Because they're great starting points as well if you want to stamp into them, because you've got colours all ready to go. Right, I'm not using the Ecoline paper here. This is an offcut of card that I've got, because I like to experiment on different cards. So that's picked up some of that, and that's picked up some of that. So I'm just going to turn these around and get the rest of the ink off this stencil. As I said before, if using a dirty stencil bothers you, just clean it in between each process. I just like the unknown that might happen. So right, let's put the stencil to one side. And these are just mop-ups that I will use again for another project. So these are our backgrounds that we've created. And I really wanted this video to be about the process of not creating with liquid watercolour, but having a little bit of control, because sometimes it's that lack of control that worries us. So we've now got these beautiful, vibrant backgrounds as a starting point. So I swap those there, and then these were the original starting point of each of those. So from those lighter colours, adding a little bit of the explosion powders in, which are now starting to dry and really show off that pearlescent effect. And the original of these were the mop-ups from those, from the mop-up from those, and then adding another layer on top and, letting the colours merge and pop in lots of different ways to create backgrounds. So we're now going to let them dry, and so I'm going to let them dry naturally rather than force them to dry, and then we can look about what we can do next and how we can turn them into projects. Right, so these have dried, and I've come back, and we're going to have a little bit of a play and a little bit of an enhance of these. So what I thought was nice about doing the technique was I can still see where the stencil is, even on both of these. I can still, and that means now I can, I can do other techniques with them. So I'm going to start on this one here first, and I'm just going to get my water bottle and just get that ready. Let's grab a paintbrush. I'll move them out of sight for the moment. Don't need the brayer. I'm just going to pull the cloth back a little bit. And I'm just going to bring in some colours I want to use on this. So I'm just going to use my glass mat as a palette. In normal circumstances, I would actually use a palette, because then any colour that's left over I can keep using and using and using rather than wiping away. Now all I want to do is, I'm just going to wet my paintbrush, is I'm just going to put some water in the petal shapes of the stencil. So I'm just flooding that shape with some water. And I haven't decided, if I'm going to go colour all of them or just do them sporadically. So if I do a few, I can then see. I've got a plan in my head, but I wasn't quite sure where it was going to go. And then I'm just picking up some of the ink here on the side. I hope you can see. And I'm just going to drop it in and just let the water, let it travel and do its thing. And it's picking up some of the colour underneath. And I've now gone on one that I didn't put any water on, but we can play with that. That's cool. And I'm just going to put that there. And it's picked up some of the explosion powders there. And I just want to move it a little bit. I don't want to move it all. I just want to push a little bit of it up on the petal shapes, like so. Now, this one here that I didn't add the water to, I'm just going to put the petal colour in. And as you can see, the watercolour's working beautifully. And this time I'll just put the water now around the rest of it and let the water move in. And it creates a more of a diffuse look. Can you see where I added it? So you've got choices there. So if I push that out a little bit and push that out a little bit more there, it's picked up as well where I put the explosion powders on, the explosion powders as well. Now, if this is too much for you, you can get a tissue and you can blot it, you know, absolutely straight away. I'll just lift it up, see if I can. So I could get a tissue and blot it and lift it straight away. But with the watercolours, I want to create the little jagged edges that we see here. There'll be more colour in the centre than there will be on the outside. And it's just having a little bit of faith in yourself and trusting the process a little bit more. And just playing. Right, so I'm going to put a bit of water here and cover this. I quite like the idea of doing the combination of some dry now and some a little bit wetter. So I've got that there. And the water is, like I said, where I mixed the explosion powders in, it's picking up that. Let's do one water there. All right. I just want to take off the excess water. I want to dribble the colour in. Again, pick up some more colour would be a good idea. And you can see it where there's a lot of water. It's just sitting. Now I could, if you didn't want to do it with a paintbrush, you could get the pipette. Sorry if I was leaning down then, I was just checking to see which one I put water in. You could get the pipette and drop the pipette straight away in. And that would do exactly the same. Oh, I love the way this one is working. I've got that there. And now this one here doesn't have any water in, so we'll do that one again in a minute. So I'll add that one there. And neither does this one. So we'll just do these two. Okay, let's grab some water. I just want to bring the water around and fill in the rest of the space. And do the same here. Okay, let's move this around. And again, I'm liking the fluidity of that. Let's move this piece. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do one or two more. And then I'm going to put it to one side and let it dry. So we've got one there. And this is where I was saying this is where I've used the brayer. If you wanted more of a definition with your stencil, you could put it through your die cutting machine. My only advice if you're going to do that is sandwich everything in a couple of pieces of kitchen towel or absorbent towel, so you know the water doesn't run inside your machine. We've got that there, and I love the way that the magenta colour is now blending in. Okay, so we've got this here. Okay. And that's gone over the edge there, but you know what? I'm not really bothered. So let's drop some water in and fill that shape up. Right. Move that there. Okay, now you can also notice where I had the ink down here, every time, so when I first put it on, it's really rich, vibrant colour, and each time I've added it on after then, obviously a little bit more water's got involved. But that now gives me a background that I can work with. It can go that way, I can have it this way, you know, and changes it. But what I would like to do, whilst these are still a little bit wet, is we could add some more explosion powders and make it, or we could add some more ink. So in this one, I think let's add some more ink and see what happens. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the yellow. Now the card is, because it's all wet again, is buckling up, and that, which I actually like, because what that will do is it'll move this yellow around in a totally different way, because some bits will be raised, some bits will be flat. So I'm just dropping a little bit of the yellow directly from the pipette rather than via a brush. So you can see now, so I've got like that gradiated look of colour splashing out within the background. Now I'm going to put that to one side to let it dry, and we'll start doing some work on this one. Right, for this piece here, I've brought back in the stencil, and I'm going to be honest now and say, off camera, whilst I was moving things around, I did fiddle around and go, oh, shall I get it to line up? Shan't I? Shall I? Shan't I? And then I did faff around for a while and try and work out roughly where everything was. And I know, very sad. So what I want to do is I want to put the stencil roughly in place. Because this is double layered, it's going to be slightly different. And I want to do a similar technique that we've just done before. And I want to spritz. Now, I was using a water bottle to clean my brush in. So I could spritz with this, and the water isn't clean, so it would give me another colour, which is a really, really, really cool effect. But for today, what we'll do is I'm just going to spritz with clean water. So I'm just going to go over the stencil again. And obviously the more water you put on, the more the colour is going to run and dilute and create that beautiful watercolour effect. So I've got that there, and I'm just going to bring in the similar colours that we've done before, which was the magenta. But this time, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the pipette and just put little droplets within random petals. Okay, so I'm just working out where I want to put them. As I've gone quiet while I think about where I want to put things. Put one up there. And as you can see, where there's more water than less, I want to put some in these circles actually. And you really, looking at it like this, it looks like there's not enough water, not enough colour on here. But it's one of those things that you know, less is more. But however, you know, grab your other pieces of card and use them as mop-ups, because they're quite cool as well. So I'm just going to get now and add a little bit even more water, just mainly in the areas where I put the magenta colour, because that now will make it really translucent. As you can see, like that. So I've got that, you know, working on top of it. I'm just going to push it down gently, and I can see where it's moving amongst the stencil and how much wet is there. I'm just using very gently to push it around. Now, if you don't want to get your fingers dirty, which I know is not everybody's cup of tea, use a palette knife, the back of your paintbrush, and just push it down in places. And all I'm doing by pushing it down is I'm just forcing the ink to travel, because obviously water likes to find a way out. It's a bit like, you know, rivers to the ocean. So all I'm doing is just giving it a chance to find its own way out, and making a little bit of movement with it. Okay. Now sometimes I struggle with, you know, when enough is enough, stop, step away. Right, so if I take the stencil off now, I've got that background working. So I've now created another layer of the flower on top of the flower on top of the flower. And I've got a mud effect here. So I'm going to put that there. But what I want to do to lighten this up is I'm going to bring in a little bit of the explosions powders. And I think this time I'm going to go for Mermaid. These have golds and greens within them, which is the overall colours we've been using. And what I want to do is this time I'm just going to put the explosion powders on top. And I'm just going to let it do its thing. As you can see there. And it looks like a right royal mess, because the explosion powders are starting to melt into the colour. I'm not going to force the explosion powders out like before, so any that are dry I will brush away at the end. But as you can see, I've got different pooling, I've got different looks, but the vibrancy of the colours still stand out. Right, so let's bring that stencil in and move you very gently to the one side. And I've still got all these bits here. So let's grab, remember I was using my these sheets here. So let's just grab those little bits of ink. And we'll mop up that there, and then the rest should hopefully go into the cloth behind. So now I've got some different colours there. Oh, let's just grab that bit there. So these are now using my mop-up sheets, are now becoming, you know, backgrounds in their own right. So let's put them to dry. And we'll just give that stencil a quick clean and dry. There we go, that's about it. So I've got that drying. Now with these ones here, let's move them. Didn't really want to do too much with them. I like the vibrancy. I like the, you know, the way they look and the different way they stand out. But what I thought I could do is, this one here is more watercoloured, so I think I'm going to leave this one alone, and I'm going to work on this one. So I'm just going to grab my water. Now this is the dirty water, I'm not worried about that. And we're just going to do some brush. And what I want to do is, in certain areas I want to start lifting up the colour underneath. So I'm doing like a faux bleaching. So let's just move those out of the way. And I can then use my cloth a little bit. And I've got that there. And I'm just lightening the colours in certain of the petals. Now I could go over with a white paint, but I quite like the idea that the colour is bleached, but it's still got a watercolour look to it. So I'm just put a bit more there. And gradually I've made these slightly lighter. So I thought one side could be darker and one side could be lighter, so it's like a total contrast. Let's put a little bit more there. There we go. So just to show you, So as you can see, I've been moving, because the colour being watercolour, it will move. I've been moving some of the colour away from the petals. So now I have the contrast between this side here and a lighter side here. And I quite like that. It looks like, you know, exploded. So if you put it that way, it looks like the colour, you know, started off darker and just travelled and moved to a lighter position. Or is that just me waffling? It could be me just waffling, really, couldn't it? So I don't really want to do, she says now, putting her paintbrush back in the water, too many more. I might just do that one. And I can add, now, I mean, I could have watercoloured these petals in by picking up the colour. Now, the colour will move once dry, but don't worry that you think that everything's going to move. But it does help, you know, if you want to do a few more lifting techniques with it. And I love the way that these petals have now got whiter. Now, I'm not sure if this one will, because this has got mica powder in it, this pink one here, whether it will lift as much. But might see. Because I've made it more intense in its colour, but it might lighten down a little bit, but we'll see. Oh, it's lightening down. And obviously when it dries, it will dry slightly lighter because of the amount of water I'm putting on. Anyhow. Okay, so let's just move that water out of the way. I'm going to put the lid on it before I knock it over, because that is sadly one of the things I do. So that's now lightened this more so than it was before, but I've got those beautiful difference between the light now and the darker petals. So I'm going to leave that and work on that and leave it just like that. As I said, this one here I'm leaving as the intensity, so I've got the contrast between the two. So I'm going to put everything away and I'm going to put it all and let everything dry, and then we can see from there, you know, what stage we're going to do next. Now, these two were the ones created from the mop-up pieces that made the bottom two. And we, you know, put the stencil on the top, added on the different colours. And I just love these as they are. And this one, I'm thinking of just cutting down to make like a 7x5 card. And again, just a sentiment, a simple sentiment, and maybe something like a little bit of twine just for texture. And this one here, I think, you know, again, straightforward. Even I'm very tempted to cut this one out with like a circle and just have that mounted. Nothing more, you know, you let the background sing for themselves. Maybe add a little bit of detail possibly with a white pen. But they're my actual backgrounds totally finished. Now, I just wanted to sneak in to quickly show you. Remember, I was saying I use card for the mop-up pieces for the excess. And this is the dry piece now with all those different mop-up layers, and that's the other one created just using the different mop-up layers, and they themselves will make really cool, cut them down into card panels. But then I had a little bit of a play as well while I was waiting for these to dry, and rather than, what I did was I actually created the backgrounds first with the green and the yellow, and then once that was dry I put the stencil on top and did all the different watercolor techniques. And I quite like the way this has turned out as well. I'm not sure I'm loving it as much as these ones, but I love the idea that we can create the background and then still do the same sort of techniques. Thanks ever so much for watching. I will go off and play, and I will make these into something, and then I'll share the photographs, and I'll put a link to the blog post. If you've enjoyed my video, I'd love it if you subscribed, hit the notifications button, and come and, you know, enjoy me in my little crafty journey and little play along. All products will be linked below, and blog posts, so on and so forth, will also be linked below. If you have any questions, just drop me a comment and I'll try my best to answer them. Also, tag me if you've been playing along with Ecoline inks and the Ecoline watercolour card. I'd love to see what you do, and the different techniques you've got. I think inspiring each other is what it's all about. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.